And what could hinder you building a life that you love together is, the number one cause for divorce is finances. And when we came into this marriage, there was a lot of things from his side, particularly, that caused a lot of friction in our relationship, especially when it came to finances. And there was also a lot of things his parents didn't teach him about finances, and my parents taught me. And so he had to learn that stuff on his own, which it didn't feel good, but it was a blessing in a sense, because he actually created a whole program.
I went beyond.
Yeah, that teaches people and children of how to be able to
do better.
Yep. And so what I can say is, the struggles, the different things that we went through, the arguments and things like that, they just weren't arguments, but we were able to turn those into some lessons and also turn those into things that can help other people. And I think that matters, not that you just go through life, but that you grow through the things that you're going through and you get better. And
you also, as you get better, you got to keep a memorial. Can't just be you get better and you don't have anything that you want to teach anybody else that may be coming up that same path. So a lot of the stuff that we, the challenges and things like that she was talking about, as far as, what my parents didn't teach me, there's certain things that my parents didn't teach me that they didn't know, but there's also certain things that my parents taught me that her parents may have taught her a different way, or a way that, might have worked for them. But when you have two new families coming together in a completely different time, what worked for your parents' generation might not work for yours. So a lot of the stuff that we ended up, growing through was not just us finding our way as, millennial generation, but it also had to do with us learning how to do better individually without getting frustrated with the challenges that were faced at that moment. So as she said, some of the programs that I've been able to develop have been out of some struggle, been out of some pain and some challenges.
Right.
But they've helped a lot of people too.
Definitely. Yeah. So what I can say is, to anyone that's watching this, if you are building a life that you love, it's not going to look like everybody else's. Nope. It could look totally different, because ours doesn't look like my parents. It doesn't look like his parents. It looks like us. And I think that's the beauty of love. Yep. And how love is so varied. I think that's what Maya Angelou, right? She said love is varied. And maybe it was a movie she said it in, but she said it. So yeah, love is varied. And so it can look different in different marriages, but it doesn't mean that it's not right. Just because it's yours, you get to uniquely design it.
So it doesn't mean it's any less either. Everybody has their own different, but difference makes you guys whole and brings you together.
No. Wait, our heads are blocking. Thank you. Okay.
Gotta get the red. Really? Gotta get the red off. That lipstick kind of comes with it.
Love you.
Love you too.
That's our story.
And we're sticking to it.
That's it. You're fired. No, I'm just playing.
It wasn't perfect. So, we're just two people trying to build a new life and to, trying to break some generational curses and break down those walls of, your marriage can't work because you're, living in separate states, or your job causes you to travel for this amount of time. And, right. It can work. You just got to you have to make it work. Like, you have to be intentional. And that's something we always talk about, right before I leave. All right, babe, we got to be intentional about our conversation. What are we going to do? How are we going to continue to build? Because idle time is nothing but the devil's playground. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't give each other the necessary attention that we deserve, then other people can step in and steal that. And a lot of times that's what happens in marriages. The other, outsiders come in and they fill voids that you just ignored or you weren't willing to even acknowledge. And so that's how we've learned. That's how we've, kind of gone through this process. And I think it's just a beautiful, unconventional, thing. And we just wear that, it's our badge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. And the other beautiful thing is that we get to invite people into that, whether they have a traditional marriage or not. We can go from both ends because we were friends before we became anything. So the foundation is there, And we can relate on both ends. You know, I empathize with people automatically, but I think that's what's beautiful is not only are we building and seeing each other build as we continue to build, but we invite others to build with us. And that's where, you know, building with the Browns comes from. That's where Built to Last Marriages was birthed from. It's, you know, the mistakes and the things that we've experienced and seen or did not see, those good examples. We want to become that. Like, we're trying to be that, you know, and it's just naturally in us, you know. Not saying we're perfect, no, by far, but what we have is truly genuine and it's authentic. And I mean, that's the best thing you could ever build, is something lasting. Right?
That's it.
Jinx.
We talk a lot about dreams and goals. Like, that's something that matters to both of us, making our life count, being intentional with the time and the resources and the gifts we've been given. Damien mentioned stewardship. So just stewardship of all that we feel that God has entrusted us to. And so talking and dreaming together about desires, things God's put on our heart, and also like the nitty gritty of like, okay, where are we at right now, or this month, or this quarter, or this year, and what are goals that we have, and really being able to help support each other in pursuing those things has been pretty awesome to see all the things that the Lord has done in just the short time. It feels like a short time that we've been married, but it has been over a decade. But it is pretty amazing when I reflect on all the things that he's done, that I really believe in large part have come just from the intentionality of planning things out and trusting his timing and, you know, bringing those things to fruition. So
sounds like Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain, right?
Yeah, it's so true.
Things are exactly where we want them to be, but the best thing is the assurance is knowing that you're smack dab in the middle of God's will. And we know we're still on a journey. We know that there's more God has for us. We know there's still things in our heart. There's some things we don't have answered yet, but we keep saying we trust him, we follow him, and he's going to continue to lead us. And that's how we're going to lead our lives. And that's how we teach our kids, because we're the living examples to our kids. And now we're teaching them, you know, we didn't know COVID was going to hit. We didn't know we were going to be part-time, full-time school teachers, all those things that are combined, right?
Yeah.
But then there's God, every season, there's different season for everybody in life. But as you walk into that season, God's graced you for that season. Just knows there's a grace for where you are at now and what you're doing. And each season doesn't last forever, but it's about what you do with it. And it's about putting your trust in him.
Yeah.
We're building it off of, number one, God's purpose and fulfilling God's whole purpose for our lives, and not just trying to say, oh, well, I went to school for this, so that's all I can do. No, we have a principle in our life that we utilize that is called the 5-talent principle. You know, in the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus talks about the parable of the kingdom. And he says it's as a master or a, you know, an owner gives his servants, calls to his servants to them and calls his servants to them and gives to them the talents as according to their ability. He gave one 5, gave one 2, and gave one 1. And as a result, he went off on this amazing journey and didn't come back for a long while. Well, when he came back, what happened? The one with the 5 turned it into 10. The one with the 2 turned it into 4. The one with the 1, what did he do? Hid it and he buried it. And in that particular principle and that particular parable, God began to show us. And we used to get so frustrated with this thing, didn't we? Yeah, I mean, it was so frustrating because we used to be like, man, you know, we know we're called to minister. We know we're called to preach. We know we're called to have businesses. We want to have some big stuff. Like, we're not talking about like some small, like, okay, we just want to have a little something on the side. No, we're talking about, you know, industry impacting things, you know, and doing some things for God on a grand scale, a music, you know, career, you know, designing clothes and, you know, speaking, business, you know, all of these different things, preaching, building a church, you know, all of this stuff. And we used to get so frustrated because we're like, what's our one thing? And God began to say, no, you have 5 talents.
I've given you 5 according to your ability. I've given you talents. I've given you a purpose according to your ability.
Yes.
Forget about everybody else who maybe only wants to do the 1, who only wants to do the 2. If you're a person that understands stewardship, you have to understand that the master is coming back to give an account, and you're going to give an account or settle accounts with him based off of what he gave you. And so we found that it would be a disservice to God if we
And
just
to one
say,
another.
and to one another,
Mhm.
if we just try to narrow it down and only do that one thing for the rest of our lives. And people say, well, maybe you're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. But we found the secret sauce. It's not about having to do everything at the same time, but understanding that for everything, there is a time and there's a purpose and there's a season. And there's a lot of people that we're called to, that we minister to, that have the same call that says, hey, listen, I know that I'm called to do more than one thing. I'm not just a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I'm not just a pastor. I'm not just an entrepreneur. I'm not just a writer. I'm not just this. I'm all of those things, but they'll manifest over the course of my life in different seasons. So I'm not going to bury any of these gifts. And we support one another in that.
And I was going to say, and it's through that support and the push from one another to build and to, do all that God has painted on our lives to do, that through that the legacy is built, even where our children, they're watching and they're now wanting to do, the things that they're purpose and called to do,
Absolutely.
But living life with no caps and in support of one another so that it can multiply and so that our children can now duplicate that and multiply that. So that's one of the things, like, for me, where we're able to build together and how we have been able to build together. It's the agreement that we've walked in agreement. If I have a crazy, outlandish, quote unquote, crazy, outlandish dream or, desire to do something, or he does, we never squelch it like, with doubt, with fear, with with talks of intimidation, but we pour into each other. We exhort one another. We encourage. We're like, what do we need to do? Come on, let's do it.
And stay tuned for next week on Love and Lifestyle for season 2. Check this out.
But I was busy, actually truly busy trying to get my work done. But I had every intention to call because when I met him at the Bible study, he was like sitting in the front, answering all the questions. They'd be like, turn to Philemon, and he would just turn right to it. And I'm like, he's not he's not looking at the table of contents. This guy might know exactly what he's talking about.
You know the Bible if you know what Philemon is. You know what I'm saying? So
whatever it was, he just turned right to it. So I definitely have my eyes on him for that reason.
Love and lifestyle.
Lifestyle.